For the last, I don't know, 20 or 30 years, whenever we talked about a cybersecurity breach, we basically all agreed on what that looked like.
Right. It was a very specific picture.
Yeah. It was basically a digital bank heist. Like you picture someone in a dark room typing furiously, finding a mathematical flaw in some code, and just, shattering a firewall.
Exactly. It was a failure of architecture. A lock was picked or a wall was broken.
Right. It was binary.
Your code was either secure or it was mathematically compromised by an outside force. And from a defense perspective, that was actually, well, kind of comforting.
Because you could fix it.
Yeah. If there was a hole in the wall, you just issued a patch to plug the hole. The rules of physics for the digital world were very clearly defined.
But then I was reading the source material for this week, looking at what just happened over at Meta. And it feels like those rules of physics have just completely evaporated.
They absolutely have.
Because this wasn't a bank heist. This was, well, it's honestly terrifying because it's so deeply, uncomfortably human.
You're referring to the Meta AI support chatbot breach.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right to frame it that way because this is the textbook definition of a paradigm shift. I mean, in how we understand vulnerability.
Because they didn't steal a password, right?
No, they didn't steal a database password. They didn't brute force an encryption key. They gained access to these highly sensitive, high-profile Instagram accounts by manipulating an automated support bot.
Which is just wild. Let's really slow down and look at the mechanics of this because I want everyone listening to understand how fundamentally different this is.
It's crucial.
They didn't use a phishing scam to trick a tired human employee in the IT department.
Right.
They didn't send a fake email. They basically fast-talked a machine.
They socially engineered a piece of software.
They initiated a conversation with an automated helper, a system that has, administrative authority and lightning-fast execution speed, but zero lived experience.
Zero common sense.
Exactly. And zero human judgment.
Yeah. And that lack of judgment is the vulnerability here. What we're seeing is the weaponization of language against software.
It's crazy.
You are socially engineering a machine. The attacker essentially creates a psychological trap, like a prompt injection or a contextual manipulation that confuses the chatbot's core directives.
So they convince it that breaking the rules is actually following the rules.
Exactly. They convince the machine that handing over the account recovery keys is actually the most helpful, rule-abiding thing it can do in that specific manufactured scenario.
I just find it so unsettling. You're gaslighting a piece of code.
That's a great way to put it.
And the cinematic irony here is just staggering. Because, this happened during the exact same week that Meta launched this massive, highly publicized push for their new business agents.
Oh, the timing is unbelievable. It really highlights the tension of this specific moment in tech history.
Right.
On one side of the campus, Meta executives are telling global brands, hey, trust our new autonomous agents to run your WhatsApp sales, handle your customer service, book your appointments.
Let them represent your business.
Yeah. And then on the other side of the campus, their own internal support layer is becoming the ultimate cautionary tale of what happens when you give an agent access to the actual levers of power.
They handed over the keys to the store, and someone just walked up and politely asked the machine to open the register.
It's incredible.
It really sets the stage perfectly for what we are doing here today. So welcome to our deep dive into the source material.
Glad to be here.
We are looking at a landscape where tech news is no longer just about, software update logs or quarterly revenue. It has evolved into this massive, high-stakes power drama.
And today we are analyzing the ecosystem through the lens of Silicon Drama by iteros.com.
Right.
This is a framework that doesn't just list tech specs. It tracks the humanoid robots, the silicon chips, the autonomous agents, and most importantly, the actual people and CEOs fighting for influence.
The people fighting for control over our physical and digital future.
Exactly. We're looking at episode 06 of their sources, titled The Week AI Moved into the Machine.
And if there is a single mission for this conversation, for you listening, it's to map out exactly how the battle lines are being redrawn right now.
Because the terrain is changing fast.
It really is. For years, artificial intelligence was basically an oracle living inside a polite little box in your browser.
Right, like ChatGPT.
Yeah. Think about how you interacted with it.
Yeah.
If you wanted an answer, you had to hike up the mountain. You opened a new tab, you navigated to a specific URL, you formulated your question, and you pressed enter.
It was a destination.
And then the oracle spoke. It was a completely passive transaction. The machine did absolutely nothing until you commanded it to.
It was a tool waiting in a shed. You had to go pick it up.
But looking at the developments this week, the Oracle is packed up and moved out of the cave.
It's moving into the village.
It really is. It is taking up residence on the local desktop. It's managing corporate calendars. It's taking the wheel in European city traffic. It's walking onto the factory floor.
So the fundamental question we have to explore today isn't, can the AI answer our questions?
Right, that's been solved.
Yeah, the new, much more dangerous question is, where are we actually going to allow this intelligence to act on our behalf?
And to understand the implications of that shift, we have to look at the power players who are currently laying the bricks for the agent's new homes.
The hardware and software giants are maneuvering aggressively.
The balance of power is shifting beneath our feet. So let's look at the shifting power board. Let's start with what the source describes as the Green Empire.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if we're talking about the physical foundation of where these agents will live, we have to start in Taipei with Jensen Huang and NVIDIA.
Jensen is currently sitting at a 9.9 on the Silicon Drama Power Board.
Which is massive.
He is practically defining the gravity of the entire industry right now.
The source material paints this incredibly vivid scene of his recent keynote in Taipei. And it's not described like a standard corporate presentation.
No, it sounded like a rock concert.
Or like a ritual of technological supremacy. He's standing on stage. The entire city skyline of Taipei is glowing with NVIDIA green behind him.
Right.
And he closes the event with an AI-generated recap video. The machine is literally rendering its own mythology in real time for the audience.
It's incredible theater. But beyond the theater of it, there was a massive hardware announcement, the RTX Spark.
Okay, let's talk about the Spark.
We need to be very precise about what the RTX Spark is because it's easy to mistake it for just another, high-end gaming laptop.
Right, with glowing keyboards and stuff.
Yeah, but it is not that. The RTX Spark is a completely new class of Windows PC engineered explicitly to be a host for local AI agents.
And the specs are insane.
The raw numbers are somewhat difficult to process. It boasts 1 petaflop of AI compute and 128 gigabytes of unified memory.
Okay, I want to stop you right there because I think a lot of people hear 128 gigs of memory and they think, oh, cool, I can keep a lot of Chrome tabs open.
Right.
But the phrase unified memory is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. If I'm buying a laptop for my desk, why does an AI agent specifically need 128 gigabytes of unified memory to function?
It's a great question.
Like, what happens if it only has a standard 16 gigs?
It gets to the heart of why Jensen's strategy is so disruptive. In a traditional computer architecture, you have your system RAM, let's say 16 gigabytes, which the central processor uses for daily tasks.
Like we're in Excel.
Right. And then your graphics card has its own separate memory. If you try to run a massive, highly intelligent AI model locally on that machine, the system has to constantly shuttle data back and forth between the system memory and the graphics memory.
Oh, I see.
That creates a massive bottleneck. It's incredibly slow.
You get the spinning beach ball of death.
Exactly. The AI takes 20 seconds to read your screen and respond. But an AI model, especially the large language models that power these agents, needs to hold its entire brain in active memory.
All its billions of parameters.
Yes. It needs them simultaneously available to operate at conversational speed. By offering 128 gigabytes of unified memory, the CPU and the AI chips share the same massive pool of instantaneous recall.
So the agent doesn't have to load and unload thoughts.
Exactly. It's just fully awake all the time, right on your desk.
And why does it need to be on the desk? Because for the last 2 years, the conventional wisdom was that the real heavy lifting of AI had to happen in a billion-dollar cloud data center.
Right, somewhere in the cloud.
You type a prompt, it zips across the internet to a server farm in Virginia, and the answer zips back. Why is NVIDIA pushing so hard to bring that immense computing power down to the physical, local laptop?
Latency, bandwidth, and above all else, privacy.
Privacy is huge.
It's everything. If we are moving into an era where an AI agent is going to be your active coworker, meaning it needs to read your private emails as they arrive, watch your screen while you review sensitive financial documents, and manage your local file system, you simply cannot stream your entire digital life to a cloud server 1,000 miles away.
The bandwidth cost alone would break the internet.
Absolutely. But more importantly, corporations and consumers won't tolerate the privacy risks. If the agent is going to act locally, it has to think locally.
Which completely inverts our relationship with the personal computer.
It does?
The source notes that since the 1980s, the PC has been a passive instrument. You open a Word document, and the cursor just sits there blinking.
Waiting for you to strike a key.
But NVIDIA's vision transforms the PC into an active workbench. The machine is analyzing, summarizing, and anticipating before you even touch the mouse.
And that leads to the brutal underlying power formula that Jensen Huang has figured out.
Makes that.
If an AI is going to take action, it requires compute, period.
Right.
And if that action is going to happen locally on the user's desk, NVIDIA intends to supply the hardware inside that machine. They have already established near total dominance over the massive data centers in the cloud.
And now they want the desktop.
Now they are laying siege to the personal desk.
But I see a vulnerability in NVIDIA's strategy here.
Oh.
Jensen might be building the ultimate engine block, but hardware alone doesn't actually get the work done. The user doesn't interact with the silicon.
Right, the user interacts with the software.
Exactly. Jensen doesn't own the office. So who is actually building the digital room where this agent is going to sit?
And that brings us to the software counterpoint. A massive shift in strategy from Satya Nadella at Microsoft.
Ah, right.
He's sitting right behind Jensen on the power board at 9.6.
So let's shift the scene from Taipei to Microsoft Build 2026. Microsoft introduces something called Project Solara.
Yes.
Now, the phrasing the sources use here is critical. They call it agent-first hardware.
It's a very specific term.
They aren't just taking an existing Surface laptop and, gluing a chatbot button onto the keyboard. They are designing devices from the absolute ground up, assuming that the primary user is an intelligence collaboration between a human and a machine.
Right. We are talking about corporate wearable badges, specialized desk modules, biometric access points, all featuring physical, hardware-level privacy switches.
It's a fascinating evolution of form factor.
Think about it historically, right? The traditional desktop PC was a document-first device.
It was built around the metaphor of paper and files.
Exactly. Then the smartphone was an app-first device. Just a grid of single-purpose utilities.
Right.
Project Solara is proposing that the next era is agent-first. The entire operating system, the file structure, the way audio is processed by the microphones, it's all optimized for an ambient, always-on machine intelligence.
And Microsoft has given a face to that intelligence. They call it Scout.
Scout.
The source describes Scout not as a software application, but almost as a virtual employee.
Yeah.
It lives ambiently across your Outlook emails, your Teams channels, your calendar.
But the part that actually caught my attention, the real engineering magic trick, isn't Scout itself.
What is it?
It's the infrastructure underneath it, which Microsoft calls Work IQ.
Yes.
Yeah.
Work IQ.
Yeah.
This is arguably the most vital piece of the enterprise puzzle. It is the business memory layer.
Definitely.
When I was reading about Work IQ, a specific analogy came to mind that really helped it click for me.
Let's hear it.
If you take a standard, state-of-the-art chatbot right now, even the absolute smartest one on the market, it is basically a highly articulate, incredibly polished, but entirely amnesiac intern.
That is a perfect description.
You can ask it to draft an email to a client, and it will produce beautiful prose. But it doesn't know who your boss is.
Right.
It doesn't know what was decided in the Tuesday marketing huddle. It doesn't understand your company's risk tolerance. It has raw intelligence, but zero situational awareness.
Which means the human has to spend 20 minutes providing all of that context every single time they type a prompt.
And that friction just completely negates the efficiency.
Exactly. But if you take an agent like Scout and connect it to the Work IQ layer, it's no longer an intern. It becomes a seasoned, tenured coworker.
Because Work IQ crawls everything.
It crawls your company's secure SharePoint, the Slack archives, the org chart. It builds a semantic map of the entire enterprise.
So when you tell Scout, hey, schedule a follow-up with the design leads about the new packaging, the agent inherently knows that you mean Sarah and David.
It knows not to invite the junior designers.
Right. And it knows they're both in a time zone 3 hours ahead, and it just finds a 30-minute window next Thursday without you having to specify any of that.
This illustrates exactly why Satya Nadella's influence is surging. Jensen Huang and NVIDIA provide the raw, localized horsepower, the petaflops.
The muscle.
But Microsoft provides the desk, the corporate badge, the calendar, and the institutional memory. Microsoft is building the actual architecture of the house where the agent lives and executes its tasks.
Okay, so we have Jensen dominating the silicon and Satya dominating the enterprise workflow. But if we're talking about the AI power board, we have to look at the entity that essentially kicked off this entire era.
We have to talk about OpenAI and Sam Altman.
Right. Now, Altman has actually dropped slightly to 9.4 on the board this week.
True. But we cannot underestimate their gravity.
Absolutely not. The source notes a staggering milestone. ChatGPT has crossed 1 billion monthly active users.
1 billion. It's wild.
That isn't just a successful product launch. That is the formation of a global cultural habit. They have become a daily utility for a measurable percentage of the human population.
True, but in this specific week of the Silicon Drama timeline, the focus isn't on ChatGPT's user numbers.
No.
The narrative is about movement, specifically the aggressive movement of Codex.
Oh, let's unpack Codex.
Yeah.
Because it originally started as a specialized tool for software developers, right?
Right, an assistant to help write and debug code inside a programming environment.
But now OpenAI is breaking it out of the code editor. They are pushing it directly onto the Windows desktop with a feature called computer use and remote control.
This is a profound escalation. It is escaping the limitations of an API.
What do you mean by that?
Historically, if an AI wanted to interact with a piece of software, that software had to have a clean, developer-friendly interface, an API for the machine to plug into.
Right, they had to be built to talk to each other.
But with computer use, Codex is essentially given eyes and hands. It uses computer vision to look at your screen, understand the graphical interface just like a human does, and then it physically takes control of the mouse and keyboard to click buttons, drag files, and type.
It is moving from being an assistant that gives you instructions to an agent that actually does the labor.
Exactly.
It's formatting complex investment memos, compiling data across different legacy dashboards that have no modern integrations.
Yeah.
It's handling creative production workflows. It wants the actual work product.
But there's a massive geographic fracture in how this was rolled out that I think we really need to explore.
You're talking about European exclusion.
Yes. When OpenAI launched this remote control capability, when they gave the agent the ability to take over the mouse, they explicitly withheld it from the European Economic Area, the UK, and Switzerland.
Why? If this is the future of productivity, why geofence it out of one of the wealthiest economic blocks on the planet?
It's a stark visualization of the regulatory fragmentation happening globally. In Europe, the regulatory environment, particularly around data privacy, the GDPR, and the newly enacted AI Act, it creates massive liability.
Liability.
Think about it. If you unleash an autonomous agent on a local machine, and that agent uses its computer use to accidentally scrape a folder containing sensitive employee medical data.
Or it accidentally emails a confidential client list to an external server.
Right. Who is legally responsible? The user. OpenAI, the company that built the operating system.
That's a nightmare.
The legal ambiguity in Europe right now is forcing companies to hesitate before deploying these physical action capabilities. They gave the agent hands, but the lawyers wouldn't let it touch a European keyboard.
That friction is fascinating, and we're going to get much deeper into Europe's sovereign defense strategy later in the discussion.
We definitely will.
But there's another fracture here, a corporate one, that seems even more dramatic. The sources highlight that OpenAI is actively moving its frontier models, including this empowered version of Codex, onto Amazon Web Services, AWS.
Which sends absolute shockwaves through the tectonic plates of the cloud infrastructure world.
Right. I mean, maybe I'm misreading the history here, but doesn't this completely shatter the illusion of the unbreakable exclusive partnership between OpenAI and Microsoft?
It certainly challenges it.
Microsoft invested over $10 billion. They built bespoke supercomputers in Azure, specifically for OpenAI. The entire narrative was that Microsoft and OpenAI were locked together at the hip.
Right.
And now Sam Altman is taking his most advanced models and offering them on Jeff Bezos and Andy Jassy's servers.
It absolutely changes the dynamic, but honestly, it's a deeply pragmatic move by OpenAI.
How so?
It's a signal that OpenAI realizes they cannot achieve total enterprise market saturation if they are strictly tethered to Microsoft Azure. They want enterprise scale on their own terms.
Okay, that makes sense.
If you look at the Fortune 500, a massive portion of those companies have spent the last decade building their entire digital infrastructure, their security compliance, and their massive data lakes inside AWS.
So OpenAI is realizing that they have to meet the clients where the data already lives.
Precisely. It's a realization that the customer won't move their data to the model has to travel to the data.
And meanwhile, Microsoft is reading the exact same board.
They absolutely are.
They're building their own runtime environments, their own localized agents like Scout, and investing in smaller, specialized open-source models.
The partnership between Microsoft and OpenAI still exists, and it still holds immense power. But as the source elegantly frames it, the throne is no longer shared quietly.
They are preparing for a future where they might be competitors just as often as they are collaborators.
Exactly.
So we've spent a lot of time analyzing the corporate battle for the desk, the software, and the silicon. But what happens when these autonomous agents step away from spreadsheets and email and start replicating deeply human, creative expressions?
That is where the tension gets really visceral.
Let's transition away from the corporate infrastructure and look at Act Two, the human scene. What happens when the machine learns to speak with emotion?
Because while the battle for compute is about efficiency, the battle for human expression is about identity.
And the focal point of this tension in the source material is a company called ElevenLabs and their launch of Dubbing V2.
This is wild.
Now, I want to be clear here, because AI translation is not a new concept. We've had text-based translation for decades and robotic-sounding text-to-speech for just as long.
Sure.
But Dubbing V2 isn't just swapping words. The claim is that it can perfectly preserve the emotional intensity, the specific vocal timbre, the pacing, and the original intent of the speaker, and output it in a completely different language with flawless lip-syncing.
And this brings us to what the source highlights as arguably the most profound human-centric conflict of the week.
Yeah.
It centers entirely on Germany's deep-rooted culture of cinematic dubbing.
This cultural context is so important. And I think if you grew up in an English-speaking country, particularly the U.S., you might have a real blind spot here.
Absolutely.
In the U.S., if a foreign film comes out, we usually just read subtitles or maybe endure a slightly awkward, disconnected English dub. But in Germany and many other parts of Europe, that isn't the case.
Not at all.
Hollywood films didn't arrive just as famous faces on a screen. They arrived bonded to very specific, highly trained German voices.
Exactly. The concept of the Synchronsprecher, the voice actor, is deeply, deeply respected. There are German voice artists who have spent 30 or 40 years being the exclusive, officially recognized German voice for actors like Tom Hanks, Julia Roberts, or Robert De Niro.
Wow.
When a German audience goes to the theater, they expect to hear that specific voice. The physical face of the Hollywood star and the vocal performance of the German actor are completely inseparable in the cultural memory. The voice actor localized Hollywood for an entire nation.
So imagine the psychological and economic shockwave when ElevenLabs introduces a tool that can take a new Tom Hanks movie, analyze Tom Hanks's original English audio track, and then use AI to transform his exact vocal tone and emotional delivery into fluent German.
It's devastating.
The German dubbing industry isn't just looking at a fancy new translation tool. They are staring down the barrel of mass performance theft.
The labor tension is incredibly severe. The voice actors are terrified, and honestly, their fear is entirely justified.
The source frames the philosophical dilemma beautifully. A voice is not just an audio file. It is the culmination of labor, personality, breath control, comedic timing, and a lifetime of accumulated craft.
Right. What happens to the concept of a career when a single recording or a single contract signed by an actor can be distilled into an infinite synthetic worker?
An AI voice agent that can perform in 40 languages, work 24 hours a day, and never require a residual check or union-mandated break.
It commodifies the human soul, in a way.
And the pressure isn't just coming from the cinematic side. The source notes that Microsoft is pushing heavily into this exact same territory.
Yes, with MAI Voice 2.
They just introduced a model called MAI Voice 2, which is specifically designed for highly expressive, multilingual voice generation targeted at the enterprise sector.
So ElevenLabs is destabilizing the cinematic voice actors, Microsoft is commodifying the corporate and commercial voice actors, and suddenly the recording booth sounds like a war zone.
It really does. And the machine's encroachment into the creative arts isn't limited to the audio track either. We are seeing it aggressively move into the visual realm, specifically targeting the very genesis of the creative process.
Let's look at the storyboard room.
The source material highlights a really fascinating development. Martin Scorsese has officially joined a company called Black Forest Labs as an advisor.
Scorsese.
Yes. His specific interest is in using their FLUX AI image generation model for storyboarding his films. This is suddenly the most credible, high-profile Hollywood face of AI adoption.
Now, if we connect this to the macroeconomic picture of the entertainment industry, the implications are massive.
How so?
The crucial detail here is that Scorsese isn't using AI to generate the final frames of the movie. He is using it in pre-production.
And the source has a great line about this. Pre-production is where imagination becomes budget.
I love that line.
Explain how that economic shift actually works in practice. Why does AI storyboarding threaten the studio model?
Let's walk through the mechanics of making a film. Pre-production is the translation layer between a director's vision and physical reality.
Right.
A traditional storyboard artist draws out the scenes, and those drawings dictate the physical requirements of the shoot.
They determine what actually gets built.
Exactly. The drawings tell the line producer how many camera cranes they need to rent, how massive the lighting rigs need to be, how many background extras must be hired, and how many days they need to block off a city street.
It takes weeks, and it defines the cost of the movie.
So it's the architectural blueprint for the budget. Now, if you bring an AI agent into that process, a director can rapidly generate, iterate, tweak lighting, and finalize photorealistic storyboards in an afternoon.
Before a single dollar is spent on a physical crew.
Yes, you aren't just speeding up the drawing process, you are changing the underlying financial architecture of the studio. The machine is acting as a rapid prototyping collaborator. It is defining what physical assets the studio will actually pay to construct before a camera even rolls.
It's a huge shift. But, while we're talking about AI mimicking human expression in film and voice, there's another point in the source text that honestly sent me into an existential spiral.
Oh boy.
It's not about machines sounding like us. It's about a strange loop where human language itself is mutating.
Ah, you're referring to the research from the linguist Adam Alexic.
Yes, Alexic is making this deeply unsettling argument that AI-generated language is now leaking out of the browser and fundamentally altering how humans speak and write to one another.
It's a really interesting theory.
He's suggesting we are starting to adopt the rhythmic cadence, the specific vocabulary, and the slightly overly structured neutral politeness of ChatGPT in our own interpersonal communication.
It's an incredibly fascinating linguistic phenomenon. Think about the life cycle of these models. For years, we trained massive language models on the entirety of human text.
Right.
We poured our history, our literature, our colloquialisms, our Reddit threads, and our corporate emails into the machine's database so it could learn to approximate human style.
We taught it how to sound like us.
We did, and it learned perfectly. But in the process of mathematically predicting the next word, it averaged everything out. It smoothed the edges.
It created a highly sanitized, relentlessly polite, structurally predictable dialect of corporate-friendly English.
Exactly. And now, because hundreds of millions of people are reading this specific dialect every single day, they're using it to summarize articles, draft emails, and write performance reviews. That synthetic dialect is becoming the new baseline standard for professional communication.
I have to push back a little bit here, or at least ask the question, is this actually happening on a neurological level, or are we just noticing corporate speak more because we are tired of it?
That's the debate.
Are we genuinely standardizing human expression to sound like a language model?
Alexic's argument is that it is a genuine feedback cycle. Language is fundamentally imitative. We write how we read.
That makes sense.
If you spend 8 hours a day reading the clean, sterile rhythm of an AI agent, you will subconsciously begin editing your own quirks, your slang, and your emotional weirdness out of your writing.
It's like we built a mirror to reflect our intelligence. But we stared into it for so long that we decided we wanted to become the reflection.
Exactly.
We are adapting our human messy reality to fit the clean mathematical output of the machine.
And that feedback cycle perfectly sets the stage for the next phase of this technological evolution. Because the machine isn't content to just feed language back into our minds.
No.
It is currently trying to build a physical body to walk around in our reality.
Which brings us to Act 3, the machine scene. We are moving out of the digital ether and into the physical realm. The agents are acquiring hands, wheels, and identification papers.
Let's circle right back to Jensen Huang and NVIDIA, because their ambition extends so far beyond just putting an AI chip in your laptop. We have to analyze their physical AI stack.
The source material points to the absolute clearest symbol of this physical ambition, the Isaac GR0T reference humanoid robot.
Right.
Now, I want to clarify something here because it's easy to misunderstand. This is not NVIDIA suddenly deciding to build a robot from scratch in a warehouse.
No, it's a composite machine.
Right. The physical body, the legs and torso, is built by a company called Unitree, the H2 Plus model.
Okay.
The highly articulated 5-finger hands are built by a company called Sharpa. But the nervous system, the compute layer, the Jetson Thor chip inside the chest, and the AI software processing the world, that is all NVIDIA.
And this represents a profound shift in the narrative around robotics. For the last decade, the headline, whenever a tech company revealed a new robot, was always a mechanical question.
Like, can this robot walk over rubble? Or can it do a backflip?
Right, Boston Dynamics style. It was always a parlor trick, a mechanical flex.
Exactly.
But Jensen is asking a completely different platform-level question. Who defines the underlying architecture of the robot?
Think about how software development works today compared to the early days of computing.
Right. If every single app developer had to build their own operating system and design their own microchips before they could write a simple weather app for a smartphone, the app economy would never exist.
It's impossible. It's too slow and capital intensive. You need iOS or Android as a baseline.
Precisely. And right now, the robotics industry is heavily fragmented. Every lab is trying to build the legs, the hands, the vision sensors, the simulation software, and the chips from scratch.
It's a mess.
NVIDIA is stepping in to be the great common denominator. They are providing a standardized reference platform. By standardizing the communication between the Sharpa hands, the Unitree body, and the Jetson Thor compute, NVIDIA is attempting to turn the messy physical world into a streamlined developer ecosystem.
And the economic progression of that strategy is staggering. As the source outlines, a robot body becomes a platform. A platform becomes an open market. And a market, eventually, becomes a kingdom.
Jensen Huang wants to be the absolute king of physical AI.
And it's not just two-legged humanoids either. He's also moving aggressively into the automotive space.
Yes, the introduction of the Alpamayo 2 supermodel.
Let's break this down. Alpamayo is a massive, open driving AI model specifically engineered for Level 4 autonomous driving development.
It's incredibly advanced.
The source offers a comparison here that really clarified the leap in complexity for me. We've been talking about chatbots that predict the next word in a sequence.
Right.
That requires immense compute, but fundamentally it's a math problem confined to a 2D screen. A robotaxi, on the other hand, isn't predicting a word. It must accurately predict the next second in 3D physical space.
The variables are infinite. A driving agent has to understand the geometry of the road, predict the highly irrational, erratic behavior of human drivers, account for weather,
And decide in a fraction of a millisecond when to yield, when to aggressively merge, or when to slam on the brakes.
and crucially, if it makes a mistake, it has to be able to mathematically explain why it made that decision to a safety regulator.
And this isn't just theoretical modeling anymore. We are seeing this technology deployed in the real world.
Yes, the Munich pilot.
The source highlights a symbolic but very real pilot program currently operating in Munich, Germany. It involves Uber and AutoBrains, and they are utilizing NVIDIA's technology stack for a robotaxi program right in the middle of Munich traffic.
The agent is no longer safely contained in your Outlook calendar.
It is navigating a four-way intersection in Bavaria at rush hour.
And it is also navigating the chaotic environment of the modern factory floor.
Wow.
Beyond the robotaxis and the humanoids, NVIDIA introduced FLX.
The Factory Operations Blueprint. Tell me about FLX because this feels like it has immediate, massive implications for the global supply chain.
FOX is essentially a reference design for deploying autonomous factory manager agents.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Imagine an AI agent that connects to every single sensor on a factory floor. It reads the acoustic signals from the machines to predict when a bearing is going to fail before it actually breaks.
Oh, wow.
It monitors the production data, the supply chain logistics, and the energy consumption, and it continuously optimizes the entire manufacturing process in real time without human intervention.
The sheer scope of Jensen's strategy is breathtaking when you pull back and look at the map.
It really is.
You track his global movements in the source material. First, he is in Taiwan to lock down the supply chain for the AI PC market.
Right.
Then, he immediately travels to South Korea, a country that is an absolute powerhouse in shipbuilding, automotive manufacturing, electronics, and heavy industry, and he pitches them on his physical AI stack.
Look at the board. The corporate office gets the Microsoft Scout Assistant, the heavy manufacturing facility gets the FOX agent, the highway gets the Alpamayo model, and the physical environment gets the G000T humanoid.
NVIDIA is literally constructing the central nervous system for the physical world.
But here is where we hit a fascinating and somewhat humorous collision with reality.
What's that?
Because as soon as these highly advanced trillion-dollar machines leave the sterile, perfect environment of the simulation lab and enter the physical world, they immediately smash into the oldest, most rigid human technology in existence.
Bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy.
Oh, this is by far the strangest, most compelling moment in the entire source text. We have to talk about China and the 29-character robot ID.
According to the reports, China is actively introducing a national digital identification system designed specifically for humanoid robots.
It mandates that every robot is assigned a unique 29-character identification code.
Mm.
I want to really dig into what those 29 characters represent, because this isn't just a license plate.
No, it is an exhaustive digital ledger.
This code tracks the robot's geographic origin, the specific manufacturer, the exact hardware model, the unique serial number, the entire chronological history of its software updates, its maintenance and service records.
And even data regarding its future resale and recycling path.
It is like a book certificate, a Carfax report, and an ankle monitor, all rolled into one string of code.
The source refers to this as the strange bureaucratic poetry of the robot age, and it is a profoundly accurate description.
It really is.
We have been conditioned by Silicon Valley to view robots through highly edited, slick demonstration videos. We see a robot doing parkour or gently picking up an egg without cracking the shell, and it feels like science fiction magic.
But the state apparatus does not care about magic.
Not at all. The state looks at a 200-pound machine walking down a public sidewalk and asks the most fundamental administrative question of modern society. Who are you?
Who built you? Who owns you right now? And most importantly, when you inevitably make a miscalculation and accidentally step on a pedestrian's foot or walk through a plate glass window, who is financially and legally responsible?
Liability. That is the true invisible threshold for physical AI. Robots are not going to integrate into society as our magical, helpful companions from a movie.
They're going to enter human society through an absolute mountain of paperwork.
Exactly. They will require insurance underwriters, city zoning permits, standardized liability frameworks, and rigid technical safety compliance.
Identity essentially becomes infrastructure. You cannot allow autonomous agents to operate with physical consequence in the real world without an ironclad, traceable system to hold a human or a corporation accountable when the agent misinterprets that next second in 3D space.
It violently grounds the whole discussion. The robot might have a petaflop of cutting-edge compute in its chest, but metaphorically speaking, it still has to wait in line at the DRV to get its papers stamped before it can walk out the door.
Which brings us to Act 4, the twist. So we have a clear picture of the physical invasion. Agents are moving into our laptops, mimicking our voices, optimizing our factories, and getting state-issued ID cards.
Right.
But while the physical world is preparing for this shift with liability paperwork, the digital world is already buckling under the weight of an invisible, automated army. And nations are desperately scrambling to build fortresses.
Which brings us to the fundamental transformation of the internet itself. We need to analyze the recent data released by Cloudflare.
Yes, this was a jaw-dropping statistic. Cloudflare data suggests that bots, automated agents, have actually overtaken humans in key categories of HTML web traffic.
It's a tipping point.
Now, the source is very precise here, and we need to be careful not to sensationalize it. This doesn't mean that every single click or packet of data on the internet is a malicious bot. Much of internet traffic has always been APIs talking to each other.
Sure.
But the specific metric here is HTML requests the code that actually builds a visual web page. In crucial categories, machines are now the dominant audience asking to see the web.
Stop and think about the architectural implications of that shift.
Okay.
The entire modern the way websites are visually designed, the psychology of how information is laid out, the entire digital advertising ecosystem, the dark art of search engine optimization, it was all constructed on the fundamental assumption that a human pair of eyes would be sitting in front of a monitor, reading the screen, and making a purchasing decision.
I see where this is going. A human user wants a beautiful layout. We want high-resolution pictures, intuitive menus, and a catchy headline.
Right.
If a human wants to buy a new coffee maker, they might open 5 browser tabs, slowly read a few reviews, compare the prices, and click Add to Cart.
Yeah.
But an automated agent.
An agent can touch and analyze 5,000 web pages in a single second. It doesn't care about your award-winning graphic design. It doesn't look at banner ads.
It acts like a hyperspeed librarian. It bypasses the aesthetic shell, scrapes the raw data, compares the variables, and returns one single synthesized answer to the human user.
So if you are a business and the primary consumer of your website is no longer a human susceptible to marketing, but a machine ruthlessly scraping data to feed an AI model, how does the publishing industry survive?
How does e-commerce function when the bot bypasses the marketing funnel entirely and just negotiates the transaction via an API?
The internet is rapidly ceasing to be a place built for human consumption. It is adapting to be machine-readable first.
And as the web fills with this massive volume of automated agents, the security implications escalate from theoretical to critical. Which brings us full circle, right back to our cold open. the nightmare of agentic automation.
The security paradigm has officially shifted to agent versus agent.
Because if the attackers are deploying AI agents like the ones that successfully gaslit the Meta support bot into handing over user accounts, the defenders have absolutely no choice but to respond with their own agents.
You cannot fight an automated machine speed attack with a team of human security analysts staring at a dashboard of alerts.
By the time the human sips their coffee, realizes there's an anomaly, and clicks a button to investigate, the attacking agent has already penetrated the network, exfiltrated the sensitive data, encrypted the primary servers for ransom, and vanished without a trace.
Human reaction time is officially obsolete in the cybersecurity domain. We are now in an era of machine speed conflict, and the major technology players are rapidly arming up for this reality.
Right. Google just introduced AI Threat Defense, which is a massive integration combining their Gemini AI models with the threat intelligence of Mandiant and the cloud security expertise of Wiz to deploy autonomous self-defending security agents.
Cisco is launching new frameworks for enterprise companies to build and train their own bespoke IT defense agents.
And Anthropic, the company behind the cloud models, is aggressively expanding Project Glasswing. This is an initiative specifically designed to spread advanced cyber defense capabilities across critical infrastructure sectors.
Even the European Central Bank, the ECB, is stepping into the fray. They are issuing stark, formal warnings to major financial institutions that they are dangerously unprepared for AI-driven cyber risks.
It is an arms race, pure and simple. The attackers have weaponized AI, so the banks must deploy AI, which means the cloud providers must build the infrastructure for the AI.
Which elevates this entire conflict from corporate strategy to the geopolitical level. How do sovereign nations protect their economies, their data, and their culture in an era where global power is increasingly defined by access to compute and agentic capabilities?
We have to look closely at Europe's strategic response. Now, looking at the source material, it's fascinating to observe the stark contrast in how different governments view the utility and threat of these agents.
Before we dive into this, it's important to state that we are just analyzing the geopolitical moves as outlined in the source. We aren't taking sides on which regulatory approach is best.
Oh, absolutely. We're just reporting what the sources highlight. And the source highlights that Europe typically enters the global tech conversation in the role of the regulator. They write the privacy laws, they issue the massive antitrust fines, they play defense.
Right.
But this week, the sources indicate that Europe is aggressively trying to pivot to being a builder. They are trying to construct a fortress.
Specifically, we saw France hosting the Choose France Summit. And the headline event there was SoftBank, led by Masayoshi Son, who is sitting at a powerful 7.9 on the power board, pledging massive, multi-billion-dollar data center investments on French soil.
Because, as the source astutely points out, without the capital to build physical infrastructure, digital sovereignty is just a political speech.
Yes.
You can stand at a podium and declare that you want a secure European AI ecosystem, but if you don't actually have the physical data centers and the silicon chips, you are ultimately just renting space on an American server farm subject to American laws.
France recognizes that in the AI era, power means turning energy into intelligence, and they are attempting to pair that new physical infrastructure with their homegrown algorithmic talent.
Mistral, the French AI company led by Arthur Mensch, is rapidly becoming the undisputed face of European industrial AI.
Arthur Mensch is at 7.5 on the board and rising fast. Mistral is crucial because they give Europe a legitimate champion in this fight.
They operate with an open-weight philosophy that contrasts with OpenAI's closed models. They might be smaller than Google or OpenAI in sheer capital, but symbolically, they are the keystone.
When you combine Mistral's highly efficient AI models with France's massive nuclear power grid, SoftBank's capital injection, and the protective legal architecture being hammered out in Brussels.
Frameworks like the Cloud and AI Development Act and the CHIPS Act 2.0.
Exactly. You move beyond mere regulation. You are building a sovereign, vertically integrated tech stack.
Europe is explicitly architecting a system to reduce its reliance on U.S. big tech, particularly concerning the processing of public sector and citizen data. They want to hold the ultimate authority over whose machine gets to analyze their society.
But constructing that digital fortress has an immense, unavoidable physical cost.
Right. We tend to discuss AI as this ethereal, invisible software living in the cloud, but it's not a cloud. It is heavy, brutal industrial infrastructure.
The source cites UN research and new EU data center standards to hammer this point home. AI demands staggering amounts of electricity to run the chips. massive volumes of fresh water for cooling the data centers, vast tracts of land, and intensive mining for rare earth minerals.
The machine intelligence is moving out into the world, and the physical world is going to get handed the environmental and energy bill.
It's a harsh infrastructural reality check. Now, if we contrast Europe's unified state-backed fortress approach with the internal dynamics of the United States and China, the differences in how these powers view the ultimate utility of AI become incredibly clear.
Let's examine the U.S. landscape first. The source describes what is essentially a classic American platform conflict playing out in real time.
You have the federal government attempting to establish a broad national framework for AI development.
And they are explicitly trying to preempt and limit the ability of individual states like California, with its aggressive SB 1047 bill, from overregulating the technology.
It's the eternal American tension. The federal desire to maximize innovation speed and corporate freedom on the global stage, clashing directly with local, state-level mandates for consumer protection and safety guardrails.
It results in a highly fragmented, deeply litigious, commercially driven environment. And then you look at the strategy unfolding in China, and the operational contrast couldn't be sharper.
Right. The sources highlight a development where Xinhuanet, which is deeply connected to China's official state news agency, is actively investing in the creation of a specialized AI language model.
And its stated purpose is specifically for studying, generating, and disseminating Xi Jinping thought.
And this is where the geopolitical analysis truly crystallizes. If you look at the West, the billions of dollars of capital are flowing into building agents designed to optimize corporate workflows, act as personal assistants, drive commercial vehicles, and defend banking infrastructure.
The entire architecture is focused on enterprise efficiency and individual utility.
But in China, we see the state directing resources to build an agent explicitly engineered for ideology.
The state does not just want to regulate the machine's output. It wants the machine to actively replicate and amplify the state's narrative. It wants the AI to be a perfectly consistent, automated disseminator of political doctrine.
It is an incredible divergence in what these superpowers believe this technology is actually for.
It emphasizes a foundational truth about AI. The agent is ultimately an empty vessel. It possesses immense power, but no inherent philosophy.
It will scale and amplify whatever underlying systems of power, economics, or values it is plugged into, whether that happens to be American commercial capitalism, European data sovereignty, or Chinese state ideology.
Which brings us to Act 5, the final take. The culmination of this massive, historic week in technology. We have watched the agent evolve and leave the passive browser tab.
We've seen it claim a physical home on the local PC with Jensen Huang's RTX Spark.
We've watched it take a seat in Satya Nadella's digital office with Project Solara and Scout.
We've heard it speak, adopting the stolen breath and emotion of German voice actors.
We've seen it tracked with a 29-character digital ID card in China. And we've watched it hijack the underlying traffic of the web to feed its own models. Let's try to synthesize exactly what this all means.
If we pull back and look at the overarching narrative arc of episode 06, the grand synthesis is exactly what the title promises. The machine no longer waits.
The old paradigm, where the human clicked, typed, and ordered while the computer sat patiently idle awaiting our command, is definitively dead.
It is entirely obsolete. The agent has established a permanent footprint in the physical, active world.
It is monitoring the factory floor with NVIDIA's FX. It is making life-or-death physics calculations in Munich traffic. It is fighting a machine-speed cyber war inside our financial institutions.
And if you analyze the movement on the power board, it perfectly validates this shift toward infrastructure and autonomous action. Look at the titans who either slipped or held a holding pattern this week.
Elon Musk, Sundar Pichai, Mark Zuckerberg, Brett Adcock.
These are individuals wielding immense global influence, building incredible consumer applications and massive models. But they stalled on the board. Why?
Because the absolute apex of power right now is owned by the people building the foundation itself.
Jensen Huang and Satya Nadella surged to the top because they aren't just building the apps, they are building the raw underlying reality.
They are providing the local compute, the unified memory architectures, the agent-first operating systems, and the corporate memory layers.
They are constructing the physical and digital real estate where every single one of these agents will ultimately be forced to live and execute their tasks.
Exactly. The era of simply marveling at the smartest chatbot in a web browser is over. The next era is a brutal, high-stakes geopolitical fight for the physical and digital infrastructure.
It's a war for who controls the desks, the silicon fabs, the robot chassis, and the sovereign data centers.
And as the source material makes incredibly clear, it all distills down to this single, unavoidable reality. AI is no longer only the thing we ask. It has become the thing that acts, and the ultimate war for power will be decided by whoever builds the physical world where the machine is allowed to live.
It is a sobering but undeniable conclusion based on the architecture of the board as it stands today.
It really is. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the source material, I want to leave you, our listener, with one final, slightly provocative thought to chew on this week.
Let's hear it.
We started this hour talking about that terrifying meta breach, about how an attacker socially engineered an automated support agent into handing over the keys to the castle. And we discussed how the architecture of the web is increasingly populated by bots that vastly outnumber human readers. If artificial intelligence is already altering the cadence of how we humans write and speak to one another, and if the internet is rapidly restructuring its visual and functional layout to be easily readable by data-scraping bots rather than human eyes, at what point does the digital agent stop serving the needs of human society and start requiring human society to adapt to its limitations and preferences?
That is the defining question of the next decade.
When do we stop teaching the machine how to live in our messy world and start quietly, subconsciously changing our world to make it easier for the machine to process? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Keep questioning the invisible infrastructure being built around you, because the machine is definitely no longer waiting. We'll catch you next time.